You've probably been told your entire life that wealth is something you chase, that it's out there, in a number, in a status, in a lifestyle. But here's the truth most never realize until it's too late. You can be rich in your bank account and bankrupt in your soul. You can gain the world and lose your peace. That's why the Stoics didn't measure wealth in gold, but in character, in clarity, in the ability to sit with yourself in silence and feel complete. We live in a time obsessed with visible success, but the deeper question is, are you cultivating invisible success? The kind you don't post, the kind that can't be taken from you, the kind that shows up in how you respond to pain, how you treat people who can't help you, how you carry yourself when no one's watching. That's what this episode is about. This is not about rejecting the material world. It's about refusing to be owned by it, about choosing to invest in what lasts when everything else fades. Because at the end of the day, it's not what's in your pocket that gives you peace. It's what's in your mind, your habits, your soul. Let's talk about inner wealth, real wealth, the kind that no storm can steal. And let's begin with the first reminder. 1. Riches of character outweigh riches of coin. We've all seen it. People with everything, the car, the clothes, the connections, and yet there's an emptiness in their eyes, a quiet desperation behind the carefully crafted image, because what we call wealth today is often just decoration. And while it may impress the world, it doesn't quiet the mind. It doesn't bring you closer to peace, and it certainly doesn't teach you how to live. The Stoics knew this long before modern psychology caught up. They believed that true wealth is not found in what you possess, but in who you become. It's not in the size of your bank account, but in the strength of your character. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet his journals were filled not with pride, but with reminders to be humble, to stay disciplined, to live in alignment with nature and reason. Why? Because even the emperor knew, if you lose your virtue, you've lost everything that matters. It's easy to chase what shines, to believe that more money, more recognition, or more status will finally make you feel secure. But the feeling never lasts. One achievement leads to another craving. One luxury opens the door to another insecurity. You buy more, but you don't become more, because possessions by nature exist outside of you, and anything external can be lost, stolen, broken, or taken away in an instant. But what's internal? That's untouchable. Character doesn't rust. It doesn't crash with the stock market. It doesn't disappear when people stop applauding. It's with you when the lights go off. It's with you when you're alone in silence. It's what anchors you when everything else falls apart. And unlike money, character isn't inherited. It's earned, built through decisions no one sees, choices made in private, battles fought within. Think about this. The richest people in history, not by currency, but by influence, were often not the wealthiest in material terms. Socrates died with nothing, but left behind a legacy of thought that still shapes minds today. Epictetus was born a slave, and yet became one of the most revered teachers of freedom, inner freedom. And Marcus Aurelius, surrounded by gold and power, chose to spend his nights writing reminders to himself to be kind, to endure, to stay honest. That's wealth, not the kind you flaunt, the kind you live. Wealth of character shows up in the hardest moments, when someone betrays you and you choose not to retaliate, when life disappoints you and you keep moving forward with grace, when the world tempts you with shortcuts and you choose integrity over comfort. Those moments don't make headlines, but they build something stronger than money: self-respect. Ask yourself this: If you had to walk away from your job, your house, your phone, and your titles, would you still feel whole? Would you still feel worthy? The answer to that question tells you everything about your true wealth. Because in the end, nothing external guarantees peace. But internal strength? That's what makes peace possible, regardless of your circumstances. Seneca said it best: "A man is not poor if he has little, only if he desires more." And that's the trap of modern life. Not lack, but endless desire, the belief that you need more to be more. But the Stoic flips that idea. He doesn't seek more, he seeks enough. He doesn't chase excess, he cultivates virtue. Because he knows, if your value is built on things, then losing those things will break you. But if your value is built on truth, discipline, and courage, nothing can take that away. So, how do you measure your wealth? Not by what you wear, not by what you drive, but by how you live, how you speak when you're angry, how you treat people who can't benefit you, how you hold yourself when no one's watching. That's where your riches are, in the moments that test your soul, in the decisions that shape your essence. And here's the beauty of it: riches of character are available to everyone. You don't need a raise to earn them. You don't need to be born into privilege. You just need to choose better today than you did yesterday. To speak with more honesty, to act with more purpose, to live with more alignment. So the next time the world tries to tell you that success is measured in likes, in followers, in paychecks, pause, breathe. Remember what the Stoics taught: that the richest life is not the loudest one, but the most principled one, and that a quiet, steady, virtuous soul will always be wealthier than the noisiest display of luxury. 2. Success is self-mastery. What if success wasn't something to be won, but something to be embodied? What if the measure of a truly successful life wasn't how many people admire you, but how well you govern yourself when no one is watching? This is the Stoic view. A radical shift from the modern obsession with appearance. To the Stoic, success isn't about conquering the world. It's about conquering yourself. Because the greatest victories are not public, they're internal. Waking up and doing what you said you would, even when you don't feel like it. Resisting the impulse to react in anger, telling the truth when it would be easier to lie. These small, invisible wins, that's what builds real power. Self-mastery means you are not a slave to your emotions, not controlled by your cravings, not governed by public opinion or fleeting moods. You lead yourself. And that is rare. Most people live by default. They do what feels good, what's easy, what earns approval. They drift through life reacting to whatever appears in front of them. But the Stoic doesn't drift. He directs. He takes full responsibility for his thoughts, his choices, his habits. He trains himself like an athlete trains his body, every day, with discipline, with purpose, because he knows that without self-mastery, no achievement will bring peace. There's a powerful line from Epictetus: "No man is free who is not master of himself," and it holds true today more than ever. We think of freedom as the ability to do what we want, but real freedom is the ability to not do what will destroy you, to resist the pull of instant gratification, to stay rooted when everything tries to throw you off center, to choose long-term clarity over short-term comfort. And here's the paradox: the more you master yourself, the more of life opens up to you, because you become trustworthy, not just to others, but to yourself. You start to believe your own word. You build inner confidence, not from affirmations or hype, but from evidence, from consistent action, from knowing that when things get hard, you won't abandon your values. This kind of strength doesn't show up on a resume. It doesn't come with awards or applause, but it shows up in how you handle crisis, how you respond to failure, how you recover after you fall. Self-mastery is what gives you endurance when motivation dies. It's what keeps you moving when no one's cheering. It's what whispers to you in moments of chaos. Stay calm. You know who you are. And here's the truth. Anyone can start cultivating it. You don't need to wait for the perfect moment. You don't need permission. You just need to decide that your internal world matters more than external circumstances. That you are no longer okay with being ruled by impulse or fear. That your peace is worth more than your pleasure. It starts with small acts. Waking up when you said you would. Eating with awareness instead of escape. Speaking with kindness when you're irritated. Sitting in silence instead of numbing with noise. These don't look impressive to the outside world, but inside, they build a fortress, a quiet power, a groundedness that doesn't depend on applause. Ask yourself this: who runs your life? Is it your emotions, your insecurities, the expectations of others? Or is it you, the deeper you, the one guided by values, by reason, by clarity? If you want real success, lasting, soul-deep, unshakable success, then pursue mastery over yourself. Because once you can lead your own mind, there's nothing you can't face. Chaos doesn't shake you. Criticism doesn't break you. And even in the silence, without titles or praise, you know you're winning. 3. Accumulate peace, not possessions. There's a quiet illusion we're all fed from the moment we're old enough to want, that the more you have, the more secure you'll feel. That peace is something you buy. That calm comes from comfort. But time and experience both reveal a deeper truth. You can fill your house and still feel empty. You can own everything and still be owned by restlessness. Because peace doesn't live in possessions, it lives in perspective. The Stoics were not against wealth. They didn't romanticize poverty or shame ambition. What they did was reframe the purpose of all these pursuits. They asked the one question we so often avoid: will this actually bring me peace? Because without peace, all gain is temporary. All achievement is shallow. You can travel to paradise and still carry chaos with you if you haven't learned how to calm the mind. Possessions are neutral. It's our attachment that makes them dangerous. When we believe we need them to feel okay, we give them power over us. When we chase them endlessly, we trade our presence for pressure. And when we fear losing them, we lose ourselves in anxiety. The Stoics' wisdom is simple. It's not about what you own. It's about what you cling to. Think of it like this. Every possession adds weight. Physical, emotional, psychological. Every item you own comes with responsibility, maintenance, risk. And over time, what starts as comfort becomes clutter. Not just in your home, but in your head. But peace, it travels light. It doesn't demand more. It invites less. It asks for presence, not performance. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." In other words, poverty isn't always lack. Sometimes it's desire, a deep, insatiable hunger that no object can fill. And when we believe our inner stability depends on outer gain, we become fragile, vulnerable to loss, dependent on the next thing. But when you learn to accumulate peace through simplicity, mindfulness, discipline, you become rich in a way that nothing and no one can take from you. There's a clarity that comes from letting go, from realizing you don't need as much as you thought. That fulfillment isn't found in the next purchase, but in the next breath, in being fully here. Now the Stoic doesn't deny himself beauty, but he refuses to be dependent on it. He appreciates things without attaching his worth to them. He enjoys life's gifts while remembering they are not guaranteed. And here's the paradox again. The more peace you cultivate, the more fully you enjoy everything else. Food tastes better when you're not rushing. Silence becomes sacred when you stop avoiding it. Even luxury becomes more meaningful when it's not filling a void, but simply adding joy to an already grounded life. So the real question is, are you building a life that feels rich, or one that only looks rich? Do your days feel spacious? Do you have room to breathe, to think, to reflect? Or are you always chasing, accumulating, comparing, just to keep up an image the world told you matters? The Stoic seeks the kind of wealth that deepens the soul, not just decorates the life. He measures richness in mornings of clarity, in the ability to sit in silence without needing to escape, in friendships that don't depend on status, in a mind that is free because it has learned to need less and love more. So if your shelves are full but your spirit is tired, consider this. Maybe it's not more that you need. Maybe it's less. Less noise, less clutter, less expectation, and in that space, more peace. 4. Measure abundance by gratitude. What if wealth wasn't measured in accumulation, but in awareness? Not in how much you add, but in how deeply you see what's already there. In a world that constantly whispers, "You need more to be enough," the Stoic turns inward and asks, "Have I truly appreciated what I already have?" Because gratitude, not gold, is the true currency of abundance. Gratitude is not a passive emotion, it's an active way of perceiving, a lens through which you see what others overlook. It's the discipline of attention, of choosing to focus on what is, not what's missing. Most people live in a trance of deficiency. They see lack in the middle of plenty. They walk through life blind to miracles because they've been taught to only value what can be measured, owned, or shown off. But the Stoic sees differently. He walks through the same world, but with different eyes. A quiet morning, a moment of stillness, a mind clear of chaos. These are luxuries that cost nothing but give everything. You could have access to all the riches in the world, but if you're not present, you're poor. Because abundance without awareness is like food to someone who's forgotten how to taste. Seneca wrote, "True happiness is to enjoy the present without anxious dependence upon the future." And that joy, that grounded, unshakable sense of enough, it begins with gratitude, not the kind posted online, not the occasional checklist of blessings, but a practiced, consistent effort to see, to pause, to thank life even when it's not giving you what you wanted. Here's the paradox. The more you practice gratitude, the more abundant your life becomes, even if nothing changes externally. That's because abundance is a state of being. It's the ability to recognize value where others see ordinary. A glass of water after thirst. A kind word when you're down. The fact that your lungs are still breathing, that your heart is still beating, that you're still here, these are not small things. They are everything. And when you truly feel their weight, life becomes sacred. But we often miss this, don't we? We race past moments. We overlook people. We forget to acknowledge how far we've come because we're always fixated on how far we still have to go. And in that forgetting, we rob ourselves of the wealth we already possess. Gratitude doesn't mean settling. It doesn't mean giving up your ambition or becoming passive. It means recognizing that you are already standing on a foundation and building from that place of strength, not from panic or fear. The Stoic is ambitious, but he is not frantic. He works, but he also remembers. He remembers that a quiet evening with a clear conscience is more valuable than any trophy. That inner alignment is worth more than outer validation. When you live in gratitude, the world slows down. You begin to savor instead of consume, to listen instead of react. And in that slowness, you gain clarity. You begin to make better choices. You stop chasing noise because silence feels rich. You stop craving attention because peace feels full. And you stop measuring your life by what's missing because you see how much has already been given. So ask yourself, when was the last time you truly paused and felt rich? Not because of your future goals, but because of your present reality. When did you last sit with your own life and feel humbled by the quiet beauty in it? Gratitude is not a personality trait. It's a practice, one the Stoics use daily to remind themselves of this truth, that the only life worth living is the one you're awake to, and that you can't be truly wealthy until you learn to cherish the invisible. 5. Detach from material outcomes. So much of our suffering comes from clinging, from attaching our identity to things that were never meant to define us. Success, money, reputation, even our goals, they become more than pursuits. They become prisons. We tell ourselves, if I don't achieve this, I've failed, or if I lose that, I've lost myself. And with that thought, we tie our peace to something fragile, something external. The Stoics saw this clearly. They believed it's not the thing itself that enslaves us. It's our attachment to it. It's our belief that we need it to be okay. But what happens when that thing disappears? When the business fails, the relationship ends, the opportunity falls through. If your self-worth is entangled with the outcome, you don't just lose the result, you lose yourself with it. Detachment is not about apathy. It's not about caring less. It's about caring wisely. It's about doing your best, showing up fully, committing with heart, and still being free. It's the art of giving your all without losing your center. The Stoic does not fear loss because he was never owned by what he pursued. He lives with intention, but he releases the outcome. Marcus Aurelius put it plainly, receive without pride, let go without attachment. That's the Stoic way. You celebrate when things go well, you endure when they don't. But in both cases, your essence remains untouched. Because you are not what you gain, you are not what you lose, you are what you choose, how you respond, how you think, how you carry yourself through both triumph and trial. In practice, detachment looks like this. You work hard, but you don't crumble if the result isn't perfect. You love deeply, but you don't beg for someone to stay. You aim high, but you're not shattered by failure. That freedom, the ability to remain whole no matter the outcome, is what makes you truly powerful. But detachment takes training. We live in a culture that teaches us the opposite, that tells us our worth depends on performance, that our happiness is found in getting more, proving more, owning more. And so we chase, we cling, we measure ourselves by moving targets. And when those targets shift, as they always do, we feel lost. The Stoic knows better. He prepares for both success and loss. He reminds himself that everything external is temporary, even the good things. So instead of clinging, he appreciates. Instead of fearing loss, he practices gratitude. Instead of building his life on sand, he builds it on principles, values, inner clarity, because those don't break when the world shakes. This mindset doesn't make you passive, it makes you powerful, because you're no longer ruled by fear, you're no longer reactive, you act from purpose, not panic. You're rooted in something deeper than reward. And that kind of strength, that inner steadiness, can't be bought. It can only be cultivated. So here's the question. What have you attached your identity to? Is it your career, your image, the admiration of others? And if it were taken from you tomorrow, who would you be? The Stoic invites you to begin untangling that knot, to remember that you are not your achievements, you are not your failures, you are something deeper, something steadier, something free. When you live without clinging, you live with clarity, and when you release the need to control the outcome, you finally regain control of yourself. 6. Virtue is the highest currency. What if the real riches weren't found in what you have, but in who you are when no one is watching? What if the ultimate form of wealth couldn't be deposited, counted, or displayed, but was felt in the calm of your mind and the weight of your actions? That's how the Stoics defined true currency. Not in coin, but in character. Not in status, but in virtue. Virtue isn't a word we hear often anymore. It sounds old, dusty, maybe even idealistic. But to the Stoics, it was everything. It meant wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, the 4 pillars they believed every strong soul should stand on. And unlike money, virtue doesn't fluctuate. It doesn't crash with the market. It doesn't disappear when the job ends or the title fades. It's a currency that's always valid, always valuable, because it comes from within. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." And in that sentence, he captured the heart of Stoic wealth. Doing the right thing, not for praise, not for profit, but because it aligns with your principles, because it reflects who you've chosen to become. In today's world, we're taught to trade integrity for attention, to bend our values for opportunity, to compromise just a little if it gets us ahead. But every time you do that, you lose something. Maybe not immediately, maybe not publicly, but inside, in that quiet space where your conscience lives, a part of you becomes poorer. The Stoic doesn't measure success by applause. He measures it by alignment. Am I living according to what I believe is right? Am I treating others with dignity even when it costs me? Am I telling the truth even when lying would be easier? That's wealth. That's power. That's what builds a soul that can't be shaken by praise or criticism. And this isn't about perfection. It's about direction. It's about showing up every day with the intention to live with integrity and having the humility to correct yourself when you fall short. Virtue isn't about looking good. It's about being good, quietly, consistently, even when no one will ever know. There's something magnetic about someone who lives like that. They don't need to advertise their worth. You feel it, in their calm, in their clarity, in the way they make you feel safe around them. They don't pretend, they don't posture, they live with depth. And depth, in a world obsessed with surfaces, is rare and powerful. Here's the hard truth. Money can open doors, but virtue determines how you walk through them. Status can impress, but only character sustains respect. Possessions may entertain, but only virtue nourishes the soul. You can win the world and still feel hollow. Or you can walk a quiet path, unnoticed by many, and still live a life of immense meaning and richness. So ask yourself, what are you really chasing? Applause or alignment? Admiration or authenticity? Would you rather be impressive or be whole? Because virtue doesn't just make you a better person, it makes you a freer one. When you live by values, you don't have to remember your lies. You don't have to fear being exposed. You don't carry the anxiety of pretending. You walk through life with a kind of lightness, because nothing owns you. And in that lightness, in that grounded strength, you realize something. You're already rich. rich in clarity, rich in integrity, rich in the kind of wealth that lasts. 7. Invest in values, not status. In a society where everything is ranked, displayed and judged, it's easy to confuse visibility with value. Status becomes the trophy. Applause becomes the goal. We start to chase what looks good instead of what is good, forgetting that a high position means nothing if it's built on shaky ground. That's why the Stoic doesn't waste his life chasing titles. He builds his life on values. Because status fades, but principles endure. There's a danger in investing your identity in status. When your worth depends on recognition, you become a slave to perception. You start living for likes instead of living in truth. You start making decisions based on what others will think instead of what aligns with your integrity. And that slowly robs you of your freedom, because the more you need to be seen as someone, the less room you have to actually become someone. The Stoics understood this trap. They didn't argue against success. They warned against worshipping it. They reminded us that the pursuit of status often leads us away from the very things that make life meaningful: honesty, purpose, humility, kindness. You can't live in alignment with your values if you're constantly adjusting yourself to fit an image. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And often, what we crave isn't money, it's admiration. It's the illusion of importance. But real importance isn't something you wear. It's something you embody. It's how you treat people when you have nothing to gain. It's how you act when no one's watching. It's the quiet strength of someone who knows who they are, with or without applause. Investing in values means asking harder questions. Not, how can I get ahead? But, what does my behavior say about what I believe? Not, do they like me? But, do I respect myself after this choice? It means slowing down in a fast world, choosing depth over display, doing what's right even when it's not rewarded. And here's the irony. When you live by values, the respect you used to chase often comes to you, but not because you sought it. It comes because people can feel when someone is real, when someone is grounded, when someone doesn't need a spotlight to feel whole. That kind of authenticity is magnetic, not flashy, but unforgettable. The Stoics' investment strategy is simple. Place your energy in what you control, your integrity, your discipline, your kindness. The returns: peace of mind, inner stability, a life that feels aligned rather than just admired. Because status can make noise, but values create substance. So the next time you feel tempted to measure your worth by your following, your income, or your title, pause. Ask yourself, would I still choose this path if no one applauded me for it? Would I still act this way if there were no trophies, no followers, no recognition at all? That's where the truth lives. That's where your power is. And that's the kind of wealth no one can take from you, because it's not something you show, it's something you are. 8. The inner life shapes the outer. We often treat the outer world like it's the cause of our inner state. We say, if only I had more money, more time, more support, then I'd feel better. But what if that equation is backwards? What if the quality of your outer life is simply the reflection of your inner one? The Stoics believed this, that peace doesn't come from fixing everything around you, but from cultivating the right foundation within you. It's not just philosophy. It's physics of the soul. The world responds to your presence. Your thoughts affect your behavior. Your mindset shapes your choices. And your choices create your life. So when your inner world is noisy, rushed, insecure, your outer world mirrors it. You might see chaos everywhere, not because the world is chaotic, but because you're carrying that chaos in your head. That's why the Stoic's first job each day isn't to check the news, chase opportunities, or rush into action. His first job is to check himself, to examine his thoughts, to ground his emotions, to decide who he wants to be before the world decides it for him. Marcus Aurelius wrote every morning not to impress anyone, but to train his mind to see clearly, to live deliberately. The Stoic trains his inner world like a gardener. Thoughts are seeds, emotions are weather, habits are the soil, and just like in a real garden, what you cultivate internally, with patience, discipline, and clarity, will eventually bloom outward into how you carry yourself, how you treat others, and how you respond to life's storms. But here's the challenge. We live in a culture that rewards outer achievement far more than inner development. You get praise for your job title, not your emotional maturity. You get attention for your looks, not your level of peace. And that can make it easy to neglect what actually sustains you: your character, your values, your self-dialogue. The Stoic flips the equation. He understands that success without self-awareness is fragile, that a beautiful home means nothing if you can't sit peacefully within it, that an impressive reputation is hollow if you're constantly anxious and reactive. So he doesn't wait for the world to calm down. He calms himself. He doesn't hope for better circumstances. He builds better thoughts. This doesn't mean ignoring real problems. It means meeting them from a place of strength. Because when your inner life is stable, the outer world loses its power to shake you. You become less reactive, more intentional, less needy, more centered. You speak with purpose. You act with clarity. You stop leaking energy into things you can't control and start investing it into the person you're becoming. So if you're feeling overwhelmed, chaotic, or disconnected, don't just look around you. Look within you. Ask yourself, what thoughts am I feeding? What beliefs am I living by? What emotions am I rehearsing every day? Because your outer life is not a mystery, it's a mirror. And the beautiful thing is, you can start shaping it right now, with one better thought, one pause before reacting, one honest reflection, and over time, those small inner shifts will reshape everything outside of you. 9. Silence is the answer to ignorance. When ignorance shouts, wisdom stays quiet. In a world that constantly rewards reaction, outrage, and endless commentary, choosing silence can feel like surrender. But to the Stoic, silence is strength. It's the discipline of not wasting your breath on what doesn't deserve your energy. It's the art of withholding your response, not out of fear, but out of mastery. You don't need to answer every insult. You don't need to correct every misunderstanding. Not every battle is worth fighting, and not every opinion deserves your attention. When someone speaks from ego, bias, or bitterness, your silence says more than your words ever could. Because silence is not weakness, it's clarity. It's knowing that some arguments are traps, and your peace is too expensive to trade for a moment of being right. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus said, "It is impossible for a man to learn what he thinks he already knows." When you're dealing with someone closed off by ego, correction only fuels their resistance. The wise man doesn't try to dominate the room with noise. He commands it with calm. He listens more than he speaks. And when he does speak, his words carry weight, not because they're loud, but because they come from depth. Think about it. How many times have you regretted saying too much? Now compare that to how often you've regretted staying silent. It's almost always the words we didn't restrain that haunt us. Silence gives you space. Space to reflect, to choose, to protect your energy from being scattered in 1,000 directions. And there's another layer. Silence is not just a reaction to others. It's a conversation with yourself. It's where the real learning happens. It's where you untangle your thoughts, face your fears, hear your intuition. The modern world is loud, but your deepest insights don't shout. They whisper. And unless you're willing to quiet the external, you'll never hear the internal. Some might call silence passive, but that's a misunderstanding. Stoic silence is active. It's a stance. It's saying, I'm not playing this game. It's refusing to be pulled into drama, into noise, into meaningless debates. It's choosing to live above the battlefield, not because you're too afraid to engage, but because you've already won the fight within. When you respond to ignorance with silence, you reveal something powerful, that your self-worth isn't on trial, that you don't need to defend your value, that your peace is not negotiable, and the people who matter, the people who see, they notice that. They respect it, because it's rare, and in that rarity, there is dignity. So next time you're tempted to fire back, to correct, to prove, pause. Ask yourself, is this worth disturbing my inner calm? Is my silence louder than my argument? The Stoic doesn't fear being misunderstood. He fears losing his center, and sometimes the strongest statement you can make is no statement at all. 10. Detachment reveals who you are. We often think that who we are is defined by what we have, our job, our relationships, our achievements. But the truth is, none of those things are permanent. None of them are fully within our control. And the moment we tie our identity to them, we live in fear of losing ourselves. That's why the Stoic path is one of detachment, not to make life colder, but to make the self clearer. Detachment doesn't mean indifference. It doesn't mean walking through life numb or disconnected. It means being able to hold everything, love, success, ambition, even pain, with open hands. It's the strength to care deeply while still being free. The ability to experience life fully without being owned by any part of it. The Stoic sees clearly that most suffering comes not from events themselves, but from our attachment to how we wanted things to go, from our belief that something had to happen for us to be okay. And when that belief breaks, we break with it. Unless we've trained for this. Unless we've learned to build our foundation deeper than circumstance. Detachment is how the Stoic protects that foundation. It's how he strips away the layers of identity that were never truly his. The expectations inherited from others, the labels placed on him, the silent contracts that say, I am only worthy if. When you release those, something incredible happens. What's left is you, your values, your discipline, your ability to respond, your will to keep walking forward. Seneca wrote, begin at once to live and count each separate day as a separate life. That's detachment in action. It's living with presence, not clinging to outcomes. It's learning to say, this is what I choose. But even if I lose it, I'll still be me. I'll still be whole. That's not defeat. That's power. Think of all the energy we spend trying to hold everything together, the fear of falling behind, the anxiety of being misunderstood, the endless striving to prove ourselves. Detachment doesn't erase effort. It frees it. You work, you love, you pursue, but you do it from a place of centeredness. You don't cling, you commit. There's a difference. This is the paradox of the Stoic life. The less you cling, the more you gain. Peace, clarity, authenticity. Because when nothing owns you, you can finally own your path. You stop reacting to life and start responding with purpose. You become someone the world can't shake, because you've already let go of what it could take. So ask yourself, if everything I rely on disappeared tomorrow, who would I still be? If you can answer that with strength, with steadiness, with self-respect, you're already rich in the way that matters most. That's the Stoic's wealth. That's the invisible power cultivated in silence, in discipline, in detachment. Because the more you let go, the more you come home to yourself. We spend so much of life chasing approval, chasing wealth, chasing validation in the eyes of people who may never even understand us. But the Stoic path doesn't ask you to chase. It asks you to return. Return to yourself. Strip away the noise, let go of the craving, and ask the deeper question, who am I without all the layers? Because when you build your life from the inside out, on discipline, on clarity, on values, you stop living like a leaf blown in the wind. You become rooted, calm, strong, and from that place, you don't just survive the storms, you grow through them. Inner wealth isn't glamorous. It won't go viral, but it will carry you through the darkest moments with your soul intact. That's what matters. That's what lasts. Everything else, status, applause, comparison, it fades. But the person you become, the depth you build in silence, that's the legacy. That's the true success. So if you've been measuring your life by the wrong metrics, today is the invitation to change that. Start cultivating the riches no one sees, and in time, you'll live a life that no loss can ever take from you. And if this episode reminded you of what really matters, share it. Someone out there is still chasing the world when what they truly need is to come home to themselves.